Hello and welcome to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Mayor Tim Elinski. Thanks for being here today. We're very fortunate to have in the studio Superintendents Hargrove and Superintendent King from Mingus Union High School and Cottonwood Oak Creek School District. Thanks to both of you for being here today.
Thank you, Tim.
We want to talk about the upcoming override. But before we do, I wanted to kind of take a back step and talk about education in general in Arizona. All three of us recently attended the Verde Valley Forum. And so I think maybe just as a follow-up, we can give a very condensed version of just an overview of education in Arizona.
Okay. Sounds great.
Who should we start with?
Steve would be fine.
All right, please.
Well, the Verde Valley Forum was held back on the 8th and 9th of September, and it brought together around 100 leaders from throughout the Verde Valley to discuss strengthening pre-K through 12 education. We always add that pre-K because the earliest, every bit of research tells us that the earliest interventions we can give our kids, the better. So access to quality early childhood education is extremely important. And we came together and we worked through the Arizona Town Hall. It was a collaboration with Arizona Town Hall. So we had some key questions that we looked at. A lot of them were based on what we can be doing to make our schools better, and how can we find more resources for our schools. I think over the last 25 years or so in Arizona, we've seen a rapid decline in the numbers and the amounts of resources that we're putting into our pre-K through 12 education. And hence we've seen a lot of things disappear, so to speak, as Arizona's moving in that more slim direction as far as education goes.
Where are we in the nation as far as funding?
Well, you can look at funding a lot of different ways. You can look at it as far as capital needs, M&O needs, but overall we're hovering right between 49th and 51st. And you say 51st, there's only 50 states, but that includes District of Columbia as well.
Okay.
About 1973, when I first started schools here in Arizona, we were right about the middle of the pack. It was probably the high point of Arizona's education funding. And from 1992 onwards, we've really seen a rapid decline. We went from about 34th to where we are today.
And to what do you attribute the reason?
Well, I think there's a few reasons. I think there's bottom line is there's a definite movement towards doing more with less. We saw huge decreases, especially after the 2007-2008 recession, and those cuts were never restored. We once had full-day kindergarten. We once had our capital needs fully funded as far as textbooks and computers and things like that, as well as our building renewal funds, and those have gone away for the most part. And in Cottonwood, thankfully, we had a very supportive community that has funded for Cottonwood Oak Creek, both our M&O override since 1991, I think for you since 1985, somewhere around there.
Yes.
And also we had a capital bond, and Cottonwood Oak Creek just completed their capital bond last night. We actually did the final presentation. So we've had a lot of upgrades, but those are all funded by local taxpayers. And where we've seen the real deficits come from is at the state level.
Okay.
And with equalization funding as far as capital needs go.
Okay. One thing that really stuck with me from the Verde Valley Forum was teacher retention, attraction and retention. Can you speak a little bit about how Arizona struggles with that?
Well, we do. You know, we all value what we have and the gifts that we have in our college educations to be able to provide the supports for students and to be able to do our craft. And as Steve alluded to, right now we are one of the bottom in the United States for paying our teachers. And in order to make a fair wage or living, support our families, then individuals look for areas they can make the most. And unfortunately, Arizona is one of the areas where that's not possible. So as we try to retain teachers, we look at going to different states and trying to pull them in because the interest in education has lowered in our college students, and we're not finding them. And the quality of them is not what it used to be. Used to be that to be a teacher was such an honor, and people looked at that as a very admirable profession. As we've seen so many cuts to our education system, if people feel they're devalued, and so nobody really wants to go into a career where they don't feel valued. We love our teachers. We know how much they mean to us, and we make sure that we do everything possible for them. However, we need community support and legislative support too to show that they are valued, and that's the only way we're going to have teachers come back is for those fair wages and to make sure that they feel like what they're doing is important.
Well, I'm honored to be representing a community that historically has always you know, supported our teachers and supported the override, so I think that's a real benefit.
Amen.
The other thing I took away from the forum was student success and how directly tied that is to the quality of teachers.
It is.
So
It's the number one impact on all students is a quality teacher. And having them in the classroom, that's going to make the biggest. You can have curriculum, you can buy programs, all of those types of things, but unless you have a teacher that knows how to connect with our kids, then you're not going to get them to learn. Because like all areas that we are in, first of all, we have to feel safe, we have to feel cared about, and we have to know that the person who's in front of us really wants us to be our very best. And so that's where that teacher comes in. The second most important is administration and how they lead the schools and the districts to be able to make sure that the teachers and the students have the resources that they need. So those two things we are blessed to have here in the Verde Valley is administration and teachers who care about kids. And with that said, then we've got a community who has backed them and supported them.
Right. On average, how long does a teacher stay in Arizona? Do either one of you remember?
Nationwide, we lose them within the first 5 years.
Okay.
That seems to be the area because they get burned out.
About half of them.
Exactly. So that's really what the sad part is. If we can keep them past that 5-year period, then generally we can keep them for a longer career.
You know, one of the things we saw back in our June board meeting, we honor our retiring teachers, and we had 6 retiring teachers. And these were teachers that had been with our district for as many as 30, 35, 40 years. And the entire time I was up there, it was a remarkable experience, but I was watching them, I was thinking, all of that knowledge, all that experience, and experience matters, it isn't anything, experience matters. And as they're walking out the door, and they've done their service, they've done a yeoman's job throughout those years, and as we see new teachers coming in, it's difficult to keep them. So as the older ones are retiring, the new ones are coming in, but they're not staying as long. So we have to strategically look and say, how are we going to support these teachers as they pursue their career, especially for those first 5 years,
Right.
and help them be successful, because teaching is not what it used to be. It's become much more difficult. There's some challenges that we couldn't have even imagined, you and I growing up, that we're seeing in our classrooms, as far as the rigor goes and the levels of technology, as far as some of the challenges that the children bring with them to school.
Sure.
Well,
from their
and
homes.
the mandates that we have.
Oh, absolutely.
We've taken over a lot more of the parenting role than we've ever had. And so those mandates, unfunded or funded, whatever,
Absolutely.
they still put a lot of pressure on our teachers and our staff to be able to provide those services.
Yeah, and you bring up an excellent point about the unfunded mandates. You know, in special education, our special education rules are increasing dramatically. And when IDEA was first passed back in 1973, which is the federal law regarding special education, they decided that it would take about 40% more to educate a child with disabilities than would be a general education child.
Okay.
But the most they've ever funded was at 17%.
Oh, wow.
And so by law, we have to make that up from somewhere. And so that comes from usually our general operating fund, which takes away from other areas as well.
Okay.
And I think that until our state and our makes that conscious decision that we will invest in our children from the very earliest ages, it's an uphill battle all the time. And like Dr. Hargrove said, we do greatly support what this community has done for our schools, because they are our schools.
Right. Right.
So.
You said those first 5 years are really critical for an incoming teacher. That's really kind of the sweet spot where you need to really support them as well as you can to make sure they stick it out. Is that right?
That's right.
Exactly, it is. And you need to educate them and support them, because you can learn a lot in college, but you can't learn how to manage a classroom. When you have students who have so many diverse needs, it's very hard to be able to explain to somebody what they're going to have to do to provide those services.
Right.
When we've got kids at different levels, I mean, Steve has mentioned a couple of times the importance of not early education for our teachers as they enter the profession, but early education for our kids.
Right.
They come to school in kindergarten with such a diverse background of knowledge. We have some that have read for a couple of years. We have some that have never picked up the alphabet.
Right.
You have some that can count and do very well with that, and others that aren't sure what a 5 is, let alone counting by 5s. As our teachers get into our professions, they're walking into those classrooms with those kids with so many different skill levels, and they're being told, make them successful.
Right.
So we have to work with them and provide them the resources to be able to do that in the actual classroom, not in a hypothetical situation where you can, manipulate anything to make you feel successful.
Sure, especially when their roles are expanded so much now as a teacher.
I walk around classrooms every day and I see the most remarkable things happening in our classrooms each and every day. Every child needs being met by these remarkably dedicated individuals, and then I read in other places how the schools are failing these children. Well, they're not in the same classrooms that I'm in.
Right.
And I think that narrative needs to be changed. And I think that our message of what's happening out there needs to be enlightened out there and say, come on into our schools, come see what's happening firsthand. Don't just listen to what you read or what you hear on some news channels. Come and see what's happening.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point too about changing the narrative, because I think another thing I took away from the forum is that even though we may be lowest or next to the lowest in per pupil funding, we have some really great successes here in Arizona that we can certainly proclaim and be proud of.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
But yet we're being judged by a test score, and that's what bothers us. We need to look at our kids and see where they're at and how successful they're becoming, and not look at that one indicator on one day where so many different things could have happened.
Right.
So
Absolutely right.
we look at it, when we walk into our classrooms, we see our kids performing, doing their very best, and making sure that our teachers making sure they're succeeding.
Yeah.
That's not a test score.
Right, right. Well, I want to say thank you for inviting me to the kickoff that you had at the beginning of the school year when you recognized all the teachers. I was very moved by that. In fact, to see how many teachers have worked for the district for so long, and just the passion that the teachers feel for the profession, and are passing down to the younger teachers that are incoming.
And it's not just our teachers, our staffs from, you look at our cafeteria staff and they know who those kids are. You look at we have a gentleman at Cottonwood Elementary School by the name of Arturo. And Arturo is a custodian, and he knows every kid by name, and he works with those kids individually and those connections that he makes. So it's top to bottom, you know, all those staff. And it does indeed take all of us to meet the needs of those children and create those loving, safe, and I'm not afraid to say loving, safe environments for those kids, because that's what they need.
Okay. All right, so we have to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a minute, and when we come back, we're going to drill down a little bit more into why this override is important for Cottonwood. Thanks. Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host this afternoon, Mayor Tim Elinski. With me today we have Superintendent King and Superintendent Hargrove. We are discussing the upcoming override.
Correct.
And just quickly, when will the ballots be hitting the mailboxes?
October 16th.
October 16th, they'll be mailed out from the county.
Okay, great.
And we're hoping that by the 18th or 19th, they'll all be mailed back in.
Okay. Do you know what the deadline is to register by chance?
The 10th.
The 10th of October? Okay. Would you encourage folks who are listening or watching right now to register to vote?
100%. You know, we tell our kids that their voices matter, and our adults need to model that too.
That's right. You don't vote, you don't matter. That's what it comes down to.
Okay. So let's talk about this override then, and what it means to the school districts.
Okay.
Quite honestly, it's to both our districts, it's imperative, because it's those programs that we can't fund without additional resources. For instance, I know a lot of people really enjoy our fine arts programs. Those are all supported through that. Many of our sports, our PE, our school nurse, our counselors, those things are all supported through the override. So to us, it's imperative to providing that well-rounded education that our students deserve.
Okay. Absolutely. For us, it's very similar. We fund our art programs, our PE programs, our intervention programs from the students that come us with some more challenges. Class size reduction, so pretty much all of those dollars go directly back into the classroom, also for gifted education as well, and they are absolutely vital. For Cottonwood Oak Creek, I think it's 10% for you, and it's 10% for us, so the total is about $1.7 million every year. Okay. And in the last 10 years, we've taken our district around $2 million in cuts, so it's a replacement, but without it, it would be devastating not to have that.
Is this a new tax?
No. It's been in place for many, many decades.
1991 for us, and I think 1989 for you.
1985.
1985 for
33
you.
years, yes.
Yeah.
So this will not be any additional impact to
No.
the taxpayers of Cottonwood?
No.
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 Yeah. What they're paying now is what they'll pay, continue to pay. So for my household, $2.75 for our Mingus district, and then $5.25 per month. That's easy for us to be able to come up with when you consider the impact it's making on children.
Sure.
And I want to be very clear too. You know, we stand together on this. You know, our kids are their kids. They are our kids coming through, and 99% of the kids that attend Cottonwood schools move on to Mingus. We want to make sure that those opportunities for kids continue on until they move on to post-secondary. And we know that about 99% of the new jobs that we're seeing being created today require at least some post-secondary education, and not just college. We're talking about vocational education, community colleges, and across the board. But those opportunities all the way from pre-K all the way through post-secondary are absolutely vital, not just for our local economy, but for the well-being of all of our citizens and our community in general.
That's true, because we're training those individuals that are going to take care of us someday.
Right.
And so how well they're trained is vastly important to us. One of the things I always say too is that somebody helped to pay for my education. Somebody helped when I went to kindergarten all the way through when I graduated from high school. You know, somebody helped when my sons went to school. And now we're asking for that continued support for this generation of students.
Right. And I think that's a very important message that you bring up, especially in our community. We have a large influx of retirees that are moving into the area, and many people living on a fixed income. So when we talk about our children and the needs that our children have, I think it's important for those who are new to the area to understand a little bit more about our children. So I'd like you each to share some information about sort of the demographics of each of the districts that you represent.
Okay.
They're pretty close. We have just over 50% of our students that have special income situations where they're either on free or reduced lunches. You know, we have a very diverse population that ranges from Native American to Hispanic to Caucasian to a mixture of everything, Asian. And so we've got a lot of different cultures and individuals with interests for their children to succeed. And so we have those demographics. We have a lot of kids that are coming from Cottonwood Oak Creek. About just over 50% of our kids come from that district, along with, and we have Clarkdale Jerome, and they're helping with the override for Mingus also. And then we take kids from other areas. And all of them come to this area because we provide the best schools. Part of that is the community support, so we can provide those programs.
Right. Absolutely. And the demographics are similar. We have a little bit higher free and reduced lunch rate, which is an indication of the socioeconomic status of these kids. But you made an excellent point, Mayor, when you were talking about the changing demographics of our community. And we are seeing a large influx of retirees because it's a beautiful place. We all come here for similar reasons. And one of the things that we would like to strongly encourage is reaching out. And we have been reaching out to our retiree community, not just for this vote. That's not what it's about necessarily, but it's about the other ways that they can support us. Come in and see our schools. Come in and read to a kid. I strongly encourage that. They need all the help they can get, and we need all the help that they can give us at any point. And I think that we can build those bridges across and say, together we're stronger in all these areas and not separate. Because it's true, you know, we look at our society over the last 50, 60 years, it used to be we all lived together. Seniors would live with their grandkids, and across the board they'd see those. And I think we're seeing a kind of a bigger disconnect across the spectrum. And I think that's part of our job, is to bring those generations together and say, look, we're all in this together, and we are stronger together.
I agree. I think your efforts in bridging that intergenerational divide is really critical to these students' success. I think they need to have as many interactions as they can with older generations to create that positive environment that they need to learn.
Some of our best learning experiences are when some of those retirees come in and tell how they got to where they are and what they experienced throughout their careers. And so that helps our kids to be able to see what they need to do to move forward. And so having them come in and talk about those careers and the college that's needed, or the technology, the tech schools that are needed, all of those types of things. And the world's changed, but we haven't. We still want to be successful. So show our kids how to do that. And so yes, we invite our retired community in. We have several of them that are bus drivers, just so they can have the experience to be able to be with our kids. We have others that work in our kitchen to be able to be around them. So we have plenty of opportunities for them to help help us to raise them.
That's right. This community is very, very wealthy.
Yeah.
You know, you look around and you see the skills that, you know, engineers and doctors and nurses and teachers and all these individuals that have served their communities that are coming here. And why wouldn't we reach out to them for their wealth of knowledge and the gifts that they bring to it?
Right. No, it's a tremendous opportunity. I think in Cottonwood, I see it all the time. Many of our boards and commissions have professional retirees that serve, and it's just a wealth of information.
Indeed.
So we're very fortunate.
Indeed.
If there's anyone watching tonight, how would they get a hold of either one of you to find out ways in which they could volunteer?
All they have to do is call. They can call the district office, or they can call the high school, and I would be more than happy to help them to come in and to work with the kids. Right. We've got a lot of career and technical education programs. One of the ones that we have is engineering, and I was so blessed to be able to hear somebody talk to me today about coming in and sharing their experiences. We have automotive, we have designing for homes, so anyone in architecture. We have film media, so anyone from this station would be most definitely welcome to come in. So there's so many different opportunities.
Good. For us, it's call 634-2288, and you can ask for me directly. And just come read a book to a class. And we're starting a new program which we're calling guest readers. And this is part of our outreach to the community, is just come in, read one book. You can read to kindergartners. If you ever read to a bunch of kindergartners, it's a rapt audience.
It is.
And it's a lot of fun. And you can choose the book. It can be a Dr. Seuss book, or it can be The Little Engine That Could. Whatever you choose. But it would be an experience, and try it once. What have you got to lose?
Right.
And everything to win.
Right.
Really.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, with that, we'll take a quick break, come back in another minute, and we'll wrap up our conversation. Thank you.
Schools have a big problem. Every year, millions of kids come to class with nothing. So teachers end up spending thousands of dollars of their own money just to make sure kids have what they need to learn. I'm the school supply fairy. My assistant and I do what we can. But we could really use your help.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride!
Welcome back. You're watching Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Mayor Tim Elinski. And with us today we have Superintendents Hargrove and Superintendent King from Mingus Union High School and Cottonwood Oak Creek School District. We're talking about the override, the importance of the override, and how this community has strongly supported overrides in the past since 1985, is that correct?
For us, yes.
For you? And
1991
91
for
for
Cottonwood
you.
Oak Creek.
Okay. Before we left on the last break, we kind of touched a little bit on the importance of educating our youth and the ties to economic development.
Yes.
I'd like to speak a little bit about that, because for me it's natural that education is directly tied to economic development, but I think for a lot of people they don't necessarily make that connection. But maybe both of you could explain.
If you've ever seen a community die, that's when the school is out. I mean, that's really what will kill a community fastest. And it is important, because one of the things that we've learned through research, and Steve and I are both big into research, so we apologize for that, but is that where our children are trained are generally where they will come back to. So they may leave, but generally they'll come back to the areas where they were in high school or college, one of those things. So for economic development, to be able to bring our kids back, providing those programs so that they're ready to come and be productive citizens is crucially important.
Okay.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And as you look from pre-K with those basic social skills and just learn how school works, all the way through kindergarten and 8th grade, where they're really developing those skills, through high school where they're fine-tuning those skills and deciding what they want to move on to the community college or the university, where they're really becoming adept at their craft. That's what it's all about. And then bringing those skills back to this community and making our community stronger. I mean, there's a direct relation between the economic development in education. And
Most definitely.
the more we can work together in those things. And I think we've made great strides with the Yavapai College. I know the VAC has been adding some different programs. I went and had the wonderful pleasure of going up and touring the Culinary Institute up in Sedona, the brand new Culinary Institute that was a collaboration between Yavapai College and VAC.
Right.
And if you haven't seen it, it's absolutely remarkable. It is a world-class kitchen where these young students, as well as adult learners, are learning what it takes to be successful in the kitchen. And that's an honorable trade going forward. So those type of opportunities, and even expanding that, I think one of the things that we're very excited about is looking at ed professions, which is growing our own teachers. You know, kind of tying into the original conversation is we do struggle with our own teachers, but we do know that we're going to need teachers.
Right.
And if we can grow our own teachers coming up through high school, through the community college, through the university, they're going to come back and they're going to teach in our own schools and bring their wealth of experience and knowledge. You know, just in Cottonwood Oak Creek, I think we have 12 to 15 teachers that grew up in Cottonwood, and every day they're going back in the classrooms and giving back. And we could use those teachers to train the next generation of teachers coming up. And that's a very, very exciting proposition that we have going. Probably one of the most exciting propositions we have right now going forward.
And one of the things that we talked about a little bit on break was that you know, having individuals from our community come in and to talk to our students. Most of them know what a police officer is, or they know what a teacher is, but what about all of the other professions that we have here in Cottonwood, so that we can talk to them and show them what it would be like and how come they want to come back, or give them those ideas that, you know, plant those seeds. And so we challenge those individuals in the community to come and share what they know, so that we can get our students interested and we can have them help us to grow this economy.
Engineers, attorneys, I mean, the list goes on and on.
Sure. And I think we're starting to understand too that we can't train 100% of our students to be doctors and lawyers.
That's true.
And I think that that kind of paradigm is shifting these days, which is good. I think there's a big shortage in the vocational, in the trades and other industries. So I think I applaud the efforts of Bob Ware at VACT and
Me too.
And you know, moving forward with that.
If you've ever been up to the Prescott, they have at the airport, they have a CTEC, which is a Career and Technical Education Center. And it's 108,000 square feet, and it was a joint collaboration between the Mountain JTED, which is the local vocational district, and Yavapai College. And inside this 108,000 square foot building are anything from gunsmithing to helicopter pilot to diesel mechanic to auto mechanic to auto body. The list goes on and on. Those are the kinds of opportunities that help the kids that we serve every day. And building those opportunities here is our primary goal, because they need something to move on to. So I do applaud those efforts as well. And Yavapai College, making that happen here is a goal of ours as well. And those collaborations we can build.
And what happens when they leave those programs with those certifications is then we have assistant placement, so that they're here in the community. So they leave high school and they have that skill, and so now they've got their first job here, which means that they're more likely to stay.
And we have a healthy community. That's what it's all about.
Right. And I think you know, with the amount of poverty that we suffer from here in Cottonwood alone, you know, about 24% of us live in poverty, and I think it's really up to leaders like us to make sure that we are providing those opportunities for our youth so that they can be successful and help grow our economy.
You have to show them a path away from it, and that's exactly what we're working to do.
And I think of that 24%, how many of those 24% are children?
Oh, sure.
And I think that's a key thing to look at, is we're seeing growing disparities between the haves and the have-nots. And too many of the have-nots are children. And that opportunity gap is growing all the time. So it is incumbent upon us adults with a responsibility to help our most vulnerable and valuable citizens grow to be valuable adults.
And like Dr. Hargrove said earlier, that towns that die are because of the schools leaving.
Correct.
So what is happening here with our student body? Are we growing? Are we shrinking? Are we maintaining?
We've been maintaining most of the time. We grew a little bit at Mingus, but when you look at the population enrollment that is just here in the Verde Valley, it seems to be pretty stable.
Good.
It does. After the recession of 27-28, we saw quite a few families leave, seeking greener pastures, other places. But since then, we've seen a stabilization. We've stayed pretty steady, right around 2,000 children, pre-K through 8 for the last 3 or 4 years.
That's encouraging.
It is.
I grew up in rural Arizona, was educated in rural Arizona, so I cannot imagine a better place to raise my family, which is why my wife and I choose to be here. But I think this is part of my goal as mayor, is to really encourage our community to embrace younger families to move here and raise your family. For all the same reasons, it's a great place to retire. I believe it's also a great place to raise your family.
That's right.
So
That's right.
And I appreciate your efforts in providing good education for our youth.
We appreciate you very much, Mayor, for all your support that you've given our schools and your engagement and your absolute commitment to our community.
Thank you.
I do, and I appreciate you being approachable so that as we come to have questions, you are very much available to help us to answer and solve those issues.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Thank you.
Let's run down the dates again real quick about this override.
Okay.
Okay.
So October 10th is the last day to register to vote, and October 10th is Tuesday
Tuesday.
of next week.
Yes.
The ballots go out on the 16th, so they'll be mailed out, and you can mail those back anytime, and voting closes on November 7th.
November 7th.
So on November 7th, the evening of November 7th, we'll know where we stand with that. And we're very hopeful.
We're going to challenge our community that when they get those ballots on the 16th or 17th, that by that Friday they've been mailed in and they're all ready to go. We just don't want
That's
them
right.
to get lost somewhere.
Yeah, don't leave them sitting around.
Right.
No.
However you're going to vote, vote early.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks to both of you.
Well,
Thank
very much
you.
for being here today. And that concludes our Inside Cottonwood. Thanks again. My name's Tim Elinski, Mayor of Cottonwood, and I'll see you next month. Thanks.
Yeah.